Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to use Sonnet's Maker's Box for this video. I have the contents that was in this Maker's Box. This is the month of June, and we are going to create with the month of June so you can see how I did them. There's a playlist below with everyone else who got this box and did a video to inspire all of you. Sonnet did a really good job putting this box together. If you didn't get June, maybe you should think about getting July after you see these videos. The papers from Royce were amazing. The paint is really good. I get a chance to try the Fusion and the Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, which I'm excited about that. And then I also am using the DIY paint. And then, if you didn't know, I'm Connie from The Painted Photographer, and my papers are in here as well. And I actually get to show you how I would use my own papers. So I am completely thankful for Sonnet and the opportunity to put my papers into her Maker's Box every month. And trust me to put together a video for you all showing you how we use these products. Follow along and make sure you hit the playlist so you can see everyone else. Here we are. We're going to do the unboxing of Sonnet's curated Maker's Box. I'm going to show you what's inside. This is amazing. I am all about the details, and I really do think that this was just the icing on the cake. Is Sonnet went ahead and made this little postcard and stuck that in there too. What to expect in your box and how to follow her. Make sure you go and follow Sonnet, give her the support, and sign up for your box in July. Next, we have the tissue paper with the nice thank you on it, and it's designed especially for this Maker's Box. It says, be inspired and unbox your creativity. Here we go. We have Roycycled paper. This is the, let me get my little cheat sheet here, Bird's Masterboard. This was worth signing up for the box. I love Royce's papers. This one is Summer Landscape. Oh, looks like a painting. I can't wait to open that up. Next, we have In a Pickle Sweet Pickins Milk Paint. I have not used milk paint, so I'm excited about this. In a Pickle. It looks like a really pretty color. And it matches so well. Look at that. That was made for that. Here we have DIY's Weathered Wood, which is a deep brown. We also have Kissing Booth from DIY. We have the little whisk for the milk paint, which that is just adorable. Then in Fusion, we have Cast Iron. That looks like a pretty color. And we also have Prairie Sunset. I've used Fusion paint before, and this was always a good favorite of mine, is this Prairie Sunset. And last but not least, we have my papers. This paper is called Sprinkling Blooms. This is inspired by Sonnet, who likes everything gardening, and she likes old vintage watering cans. So you have a full image, and then you also have a 5x7 and 2 4x6s, complete with Connie lines. We're gonna start out here with project 1. It's a tote, has some open sides and some solid sides on the opposite ends of the tote. And the Fusion mineral paint that Sonnet had sent in the box was a good opportunity for me to go ahead and use that. It is a one-step paint, so I do not have to seal it in. So I went ahead and just put a single coat of that cast iron color onto this tote. It's a beautiful black, and I do like the look of black when you can distress back to that natural wood. I painted the ends of the tote in DIY's White Swan. When you decoupage, you need a solid white surface to make the image pop a little bit more. I had to be careful to not go onto those side wood boards because I wanted that to be the cast iron. If I would have slopped on there, it would have been okay. You can see I'm taking my brush and I'm flipping it towards the end. Blech. And what that does is it'll give you a nice clean end versus if you go back and forth on that end, then you won't have a nice clean surface. So if you just take your brush and you go towards the end, you'll end up with a nice clean edge. We're going to use the Roycycled called Bird's Masterpiece that was included in the maker's box. This is a beautiful paper. It has all these bright colors that Sonnet likes. I think Royce did a really good job of picking out some beautiful paper for her. I love this stamp on here. I like those corbels that she just did a wonderful job of creating this paper. And there's a small surface that I have to cover up, so I need to figure out where to place this paper so I have the best use of the design on the ends there. I do like the birds. I like this pillar that she has in here with all the scrolly designs. I am going to take this piece and measure it to see where I need to cut so that I can get both bird images onto the end of there. I cut my paper where I need it to be, making sure that it overlaps a little bit on the ends. I start with a starter strip. Royce and Sonnet really recommend this. I also mist my paper so that it stretches and gets all those fibers all stretched out so that I don't have many wrinkles when I put it down on my project. So I just fold it back and I use the DIY's liquid patina on my starter strip, and that makes where if I leave it folded down like that, I know I'm going to get that paper in the exact spot that I want it. So I leave it folded down, I get a nice coat of the liquid patina onto my project, and then I fold the paper back up into the liquid patina. And the paper is wet, so it is very, very tearable. So you have to make sure that you're very careful not to tear the paper because it is very delicate. And then I fold it back the other way, starting with the big glob of liquid patina on the bottom of it. Do not place that right next to the paper or you will end up with a strip on your finished project and you won't know why. So when your liquid patina gets a little spread out, you can move it up to the top so that you don't have to touch the paper with the brush and you can just smooth that out. I tap it down with my hand, but then I'm also taking the plastic bag that Sonnet had put the paper into, and I put my hand in there like a glove, and then I can use that to really put the paper down to make sure that it's sealed in without the risk of tearing it. Now I'm going to go over the entire end of this box with the liquid patina right over top of the paper. This will seal it in nicely and make sure everything is stuck down the way that it needs to be stuck down. If you have any corners that are lifting, you can add the liquid patina underneath at this point, but otherwise it should stay stuck right where you placed it. When it is completely dry, you're going to take the ends and you're going to take a scissors and clip them. This was a little tricky. If this is your first time using decoupage paper, this might not be the project that you want to start with, but I clipped those ends so I could take my piece of sandpaper and I'm going to go in a straight down motion to clean off that excess paper. Now make sure your paper is very dry, because this will tear if your paper is at all wet. So I'm going to go straight down and get rid of the paper that I can that's on the edges. Then what I did is I took a razor knife, and since I didn't put the decoupage underneath there, it comes right off. So I just slit a line so that I could take that end off right there and it'd be a nice clean line. I did have this one where I didn't take off the edge yet, so after I take off the strips with the razor knife, then I can go back in with the sandpaper and finish off that end. And it made a really nice clean end. I was very happy with it. I was a bit nervous when I started this project, wondering how I was going to do this funky end, but in the end, it all turned out really great. I was wondering how to decorate the inside of my box and how to show off that design on the front side of the box as well. So I ended up taking a terracotta pot and painting it white. I needed a nice white surface underneath that decoupage paper to make the design stand out really bright and shining through. So I covered the entire pot with the DIY's White Swan. Then I took a piece of this paper and I cut it the width of this pot. And I am doing what I'm just going to cut the end of it, like the edge of it, so that it's bigger than the pot. And I really like the stamp design, so I decided to go right around it and not cut through it. And sorry, it's off camera a bit. And then I also cut around this butterfly so that I can use him later on in the video. I also wanted to show you that I use up all of my supplies, and there was the bag. I stored my brush, my liquid patina brush, inside that bag so that it didn't dry out while I was doing my other projects. So make sure that you don't throw anything away until you decide that, yep, it doesn't have a use. On this piece of paper, I did the wet tear method. So you take your paintbrush, you dip it into a dish of water, and then just use the water to make the area where you want the paper to rip. So you can just keep going around your images and get a more organic look like this versus when you do it with the scissors, you'll get a very straight cut. With this tear method, you will get a more organic look and um, it'll just look a lot better. And what I'm doing for this pot is I'm using like a mixed media technique, but instead of being on paper, it's actually on a clay pot. I went ahead and I got all these images out of here, so I don't know which ones I'm going to use, but I want them all prepared ahead of time so that they're all ready for me when I go and put this onto my clay pot. I'm adding the liquid patina onto the clay pot, and then I have wet the paper just a bit so that it makes sure that I can fit it all into all those little crevices. This project, when you're going around a circle, you will get some wrinkles, and just embrace them. Here I'm using the plastic bag and using that to push it down so that I don't rip it. And I'm going to fold this back and put some more liquid patina onto it. And then you can fold it back over top again and fit it underneath that little rim. And like I said, you're going to get some wrinkles. It's okay. Sometimes you have to embrace those wrinkles and just go with that. So here's this first image, which was a very large image, and then I put the second large image onto the other side. These birds are really colorful. I do like these birds. I think it was a good choice for Sonnet to have them in her box. Royce has a lot of bird papers, but not anything this colorful. They really are cute. So because I measured the paper out, I knew it was going to almost go around the entire pot. And so I just have a few spaces to fill in. You can go over top of the other paper and it's not going to matter. You're going to see some of that through the paper, but it's really not that big of a deal. And now you can see that we have some open spots. We're going to go ahead and fill those in with all those little pieces that we had. So the first thing we want to do is we want to paint those little pieces with white paint, and so that that the paper underneath does not show through them. Again, I don't know which ones I'm going to use, so I painted them all up with white paint. It doesn't hurt to have all of these in your stash ready for when you need them on a project. Here's my favorite part of that stamp, that circle postage, and I'm putting it right on this big open area and just decoupaging that in there, and it makes it look like that was how the paper was created, is with that stamp right there. There's a tiny little triangle that I filled in with a piece of just paper that I had from that I tore off. So just add some liquid patina and fill that right in, and it's like mixed media. You can fix all of those little holes that you might have. So we're going to add a butterfly to an area where there is already some image, but we're just going to add a little bit different character to the paper and trim it around this butterfly so he fits right in there. I thought he was a nice little pop of color for this area. This project is almost complete. I will show you the finished product and see if you like it. And I truly did like how this all turned out. I liked the box, and then I also liked how it has this pot inside the box, has some color on the front side of it. Project 2. We have a frame that I thrifted. It was like 34 cents. It does not have the glass in it right now because the glass gives a little bit of glare when I have the camera on it. So I took the glass out just for photographing purposes. And it was a very inexpensive frame at the thrift store. Here is my paper from the June Makers box. This paper is called Sprinkling Blooms. I go ahead and I take the price tag off of here. I don't want to see that coming through. And you can see that when you use this paper, some of that image on the back side is going to come through. So what I'm doing right now is I'm marking out where I want to cut this paper. So I use my paper cutters and I go ahead and I cut the top and the bottom off on this paper so that it fits into the frame nicely. When you're using the paper cutter with rice paper, it is a very thin paper, so you're going to want to take this blade, put it onto the paper, and then slide from side to side. Do not try and start from one end and go all the way to the other. The width of this paper was almost to size, so I just had to trim these little edges off and again go to the center and then go both ways. So there, that paper is done. You want to take a white surface and put it underneath your paper. So I measured out what the size is on my paper cutter. So I know this is an 8 by 10. And I fit this white paper to be the 8 by 10 that it needs to be, going and cutting both sides, and then you can fit this paper right on top. And it fits right into the frame, and you have yourself instant art. I also had a frame for the smaller piece of rice paper that's in the box, and it was just a yellow frame. It's seen better days. So I took the weathered wood from the DIY paint that was in the maker's box, and I just went ahead and put the first coat of weathered wood onto this frame just to cover up that yellow and give it a nice base. After that layer was dry, I went ahead and did a second layer of the weathered wood just to make sure that I had some really good coverage on this yellow that was on the frame before, and went all the way around, giving it a nice clean look. And what we want is we want this weathered wood to be showing after we put the top coat, the top paint color on. So I wanted to make sure that this was a nice covered base. There was paint that was in the cap, which was extremely thick paint because it had been sitting out. So I went ahead and used the pouncing method to give this frame a little bit of texture. So I took my brush and I used the thicker DIY paint and just pounced, which gave that paint a little bit of texture, and so that'll help in the end. So now I'm going ahead with the liquid patina that we have been using for the decoupage paper, and I'm sealing in that weathered wood. You want to make sure that you seal this in so that when you put the next color of paint on, that it won't wet distress through. We're using the kissing booth, so I'm going ahead and putting the kissing booth onto the picture frame in a nice smooth motion for the first coat. I like to make sure that I use all the supplies that I have. So there was paint in the lid of this kissing booth paint as well. So I made sure that I got that thicker paint out of there too before it was not usable. So I did the same pouncing motion with this kissing booth to add a little bit more texture to this picture frame and not be quite so bland. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to distress this with a baby wipe. You just take a wet baby wipe or a wet cloth, moving back and forth on the kissing booth, you're going to distress it down to the weathered wood that's under there. And because of all the pouncing that we did, you're going to see some of that texture now with the weathered wood coming through, which is going to give that picture frame a lot more character than just being smooth. We're going to use clear wax to protect this DIY paint. You're going to have to seal the DIY paint no matter which product you're using, whether you use a top coat, a liquid patina, or a wax. So I chose to use a wax on this one. I do like the look of wax. It waxes a lot darker. And then this little sprinkling can in the small version is going to be perfect in there. So I use the glass this time to mark out where my image goes, which is a lot easier. I took the paper cutter and I cut all of these little papers out and got the little image that I needed in the size that I needed. And it makes a really, really quick picture for a small little space. And just think, the next maker's box you get, you can change out the rice paper into this picture frame. And it's all painted with DIY paints, so most of the time you can find a lot of my favorite colors in these papers. And so it will look beautiful in your small little space. For project number 3, I have these 2 wood canisters. They have never been painted before, so I'm using the milk paint that Sonnet sent along in the box. This milk paint, Sweet Pickins milk paint, is called In a Pickle. And it's a really pretty green, and milk paint comes in a powder version. So I had to watch Sonnet's video to know how to use this product. You use equal parts paint to water. And I do remember Jamie Ray saying she uses warm water. So I'm not sure if Sonnet said warm water or not, but I actually used warm water to mix these two together. And so I used these 2 little plastic cups so that I could make sure that I had even amounts. And the fun little gift inside your June Makers box was this whisk. So it was to whisk your milk paint together. I was excited to try milk paint because of all the chippy that you can get with them. And I can't wait to find out how this works. I let that paint sit for 10 minutes. Actually, it was probably more like 20 or 30. And I came back and took my brush, cleaned off my little fun little whisk, so I have it for my next color in next month's box. And I stirred up that paint. And it goes on a little bit thinner than the DIY paint that I'm used to, but it did have nice coverage for that first color. And I painted all of my canister and the lid in a pickle. So I had the first color on, and then I just waited for it to dry, hoping that this would not be the time that it would chip, because I wanted to give it a second coat. So I got all of this first coat completely covered and let them sit until they were dry. So I put on the second coat. I did not have any chippy look to it. I added the second coat, which was a really good coverage in a pickle. And then I waited for them to chip. It didn't chip. So I used a heat gun. It still didn't chip. What I think happened is this is new wood. It was never painted before. It was never sealed before. So I think the paint just absorbed right into it. So I had to get a different method. So I went ahead with my sandpaper and I sanded off the areas where I want it to have a little wear to it. I still do like the result that I got, and I did try it on another project that I did have some fun chipping. I took my DIY clear wax and I sealed this milk paint in. The color is fabulous, but I wanted it to be a little bit deeper and I wanted that wood to stain up a little bit darker. So I took my DIY dark wax and went over the entire canister with the dark wax, sealing that all in, giving it a minute or so to soak into the paint and into the wood. And then I went ahead and buffed it back off with a piece of paper toweling to get the excess dark wax off of it. And I really like the finished product. It is a really nice, fun look for these canisters. They would look perfect in your kitchen, storing some short little wooden spoons, or even in any decor spot in your home, just storing a little vase with some flowers. See the difference between just the paint and the paint with the clear and the dark wax. Project 4 is this small little cutting board. I really like the shape of this little cutting board, and it was perfect for one of the sprinkling blooms rice papers. I took the string off and I wanted to combine Royce's second paper with this sprinkling can. So I added the space where I liked the color of this second paper. The second paper you'll see in project number 5 how I use that in a little bit bigger project. I went ahead and put some white paint onto this cutting board, liquid patina, and then I added the decoupage paper called Summer Landscape to the board. This would have been pretty all by itself, I have to admit. After I got it on here, it's like, oh, yeah, I like this. And this paper can be broken up into smaller little projects and have some really fun look to it. I used my brayer to make sure that this paper was really down flat onto this cutting board. I put the plastic wrap on it and then I took the brayer and just brayered so that it was nice and smooth. Now the sprinkling can, you can also wet tear on the rice paper. It's just a little bit tougher. So you got to make sure that you have a little bit of patience and you can wet tear. And I went around the entire sprinkling can image and cut off some of the floral and went as close as I possibly could to tear away all of that excess paper. Here's how it looks after I tore away as much paper as I could possibly get away. I really like it. I think it'd be really cute on a mixed media project. I went ahead and painted the black in, or the back in a white paint, and so that the design doesn't come through. After that dried, I put a coat of liquid patina onto the first paper, the decoupage paper, and after that was dry, I went ahead and seen, okay, where do I want to place this? And so I went back with the white swan. I didn't like how the background was competing with the front, so I took my white swan and I watered it down, got it nice and wet, And then I took a baby wipe and blotted some of it off. I wanted to mute them colors just a bit, and so that this is more standout. And after that dried, then I went ahead and put a coat of liquid patina back onto the cutting board and sealed in that sprinkling can onto the image. Now that sticks out a little bit more than I wanted. Those white edges are I'm still not liking it. It might have been okay, but I went in with DIY paint and I covered up some of that excess images and I painted a few more flowers and did some Connie lines, add some spackle, and then I distressed some of that back off again so that some of the Royce paper would be able to shine through again. And it was a project, but I do like the result. I think it turns out really, really sweet. So I distressed as much back as I could, and then I sealed it all in again. I went back to the weathered wood and I put that on the edges of the board. I wanted to show you that this, now that it has a coat of liquid patina, a coat of sealer on it, you can be as sloppy as you'd like on the top of this board. And what's going to happen is when it's wet, you can go ahead and distress that excess off. So here it is at the top where you can see it's definitely, I really made sure that it was sloppy, and you can distress it back. After that all dried, I went in with some clear wax and sealed the painting into the project. And then I have the DIY dark dust. So I wanted to age up and kind of give a shadow to this project as well. So I aged it up on the one side. And using the dark wax, you can get more control of your dark wax and not and control exactly where you want it to go. I put a second coat of dark dust on here because I wanted it to be just a little bit darker and I pulled too much off. So here is the finished product and I really like it. I think the two papers merged extremely well together. For our last project, I thrifted this magazine rack, I think is what it really is. It has the hole in the back. I had my husband remove the back so that it was easier to do what I needed to with this piece. The hole was damaged, so I took some plaster and I just filled in that hole so that it was, um, didn't have that delamination any longer. This worked perfectly. I let that dry and then I sanded it back down so that it was a smooth finish. You'd never know that it was damaged. We're going to use the Fusion Paint Prairie Sunset for this project. I do like this color. I used to use Fusion before I started with DIY paint. I do like the Fusion paint. I like the one-step coverage of it. And Prairie Sunset was always one of my favorite colors. So this is not new to me, but it certainly was a good refresher for this color. And there is the back side. I needed to decoupage this because we're going to decoupage it in the summer landscape decoupaging paper. So I needed a white background on there. So I covered that all up with white. This is the decoupage paper for Royce's second paper. Beautiful. And it matches the Prairie Sunset so well. I had to place where I wanted the image. I do like those buildings and I like them peeking out over the top of the magazine rack. So I made sure that I placed it so that it was high enough so that I could see that. And I cut the paper down so that I wouldn't get confused as to where I wanted it to go. I save all of my scraps because you might need them for a future project. I misted the paper so that it was nice and moist so that it didn't have very many wrinkles. It stretches the paper out also, so make sure that you place it exactly where you want it. And then you're going to do this starter strip of Decoupage medium and put that onto the backer. And then you're going to fold that paper back up again and lay that down as well as you can without any wrinkles on it. It is a little bit forgiving, so you got a little bit of time to work with it. We're going to take this patina and we're going to start down here on the bottom when we have a full glob of it on our brush. So when you get some of that smoothed out, then you can work your way back up to where the paper is. If you go right in with the heavy liquid patina, you're going to see that ridge on the outside of your paper. So take it from me, I've learned from experience that you don't want to do that. Then I went and took the liquid patina and went right over the top of the entire backing and sealed that all in. This is a gorgeous paper, and I have a feeling that this project is going to look pretty good in the end. After this back was completely dry, I went in with a piece of sandpaper and went in a downward motion until I removed all of the excess paper from around the outside of the backer board. Take a look at this project. Let me know what you think in the comments. Weren't those some fun projects? I really did enjoy working with Sonnet's box, and I hope that you enjoyed watching this video as well. If you got the box, make sure that you're sharing and showing everyone else the love that you have for this box and how exciting it was to get it, because they can sign up for next month and receive their box for July. There's a playlist listed below that you can watch other artists and see what they create, and I hope that you get as inspired from them as you did from me. Again, thanks for watching. I really, really appreciate each and every one of you. If you drop me a comment below, I'll make sure I answer you. I think Sonnet just blew this box right out of the park. So please give her some love too. Make sure that you go back and follow Sonnet's Garden Blooms on YouTube and on Facebook, and you sign up for her next Maker's Box in July. My papers will be there in July, as in the July box as well, and they are just as fabulous as they were this time. I cannot wait to see what colors we get and what other papers we get from Royce. If you would like to order any of the products that you've seen listed here, you can find them on my website at www.thepaintedphotographer.com. I also have other rice papers that are available to purchase on the website as well. If you would like to purchase the Fusion Paint or Milk Paint, please visit Sonnet's website. And as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting.